Hello and welcome into another edition of the PHNX D-Backs podcast right here on PHNX. A big ski to you all. Of course, I am your mayor of PHNX, occasionally known as Derek Montilla, and I'm very excited to have this guy back. No, it's not Jacob, despite the fact that we joked about how much they look alike and how you might not detect it's actually him or not.
I don't think me and Jacob actually really look alike.
It's depending on who you're talking to and what particular demographic, but it's the one and only Thunderstick Jesse Friedman. Glad to have you back, sir.
Yes,
I'm glad you got to spend your time in the Pacific Northwest, indoors, hiding from the snow, and sick. That seems like a really fun time.
We had a great weekend, Derek. Yeah, my vacation time was so restful and amazing, and I'm back. I'm excited to be back.
Your vacation is almost as good as the last, I guess, 11 months have been for Philadelphia sports fans, but we will get to that, of course, soon enough. Right now, we're very thankful to have you guys joining us, and of course, we did talk yesterday about the International Signing Day. The Diamondbacks end up signing quite a number of players on that list, 23 international signees on day one of the international signing period. And we did have a correction to a player's name who apparently nobody could agree on how it actually was spelled, but it's Radney, by the way, you guys. It's not Rodney, it's Radney, outfielder Adriel Radney, the number 10 prospect on the MLB pipeline, number 3 on Fangraphs. And again, we discussed how I would blow through a $1.8 million signing bonus at 16 years old almost immediately. But, Jesse, I know you weren't here, but what are your thoughts on the Diamondbacks signing of this player that's drawing comparisons to the likes of some very good players? Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah, I think I saw Julio Rodriguez on one of the scouting reports. Yeah, I mean, the guy's 16 years old, so maybe we should tap the brakes on any comps to major league players at this point. But that is also part of the excitement with acquiring players who are so young is that there's a lot of time for them to develop and a lot of time for their future projection to change, right? Like, not everyone that the Diamondbacks picked up yesterday has a future projection attached to a guy like Julio Rodriguez, but there's a lot of time for these guys to develop and kind of prove what they can do over time. So it seems like by all accounts, Radney is at the top of the list in terms of who the D-backs got, and it seems like a lot of different outlets are pretty high on him and what he could be for the Diamondbacks in the future.
They also got another outfielder that we didn't talk about much, but that was Belfy Rivera, who was number 24 on the MLB pipeline, number 19 on Fangraphs, number 17 on Baseball America. He's their next highest ranked prospect that we got in the international signing, 17 years old, another outfielder himself, plus speed, and has a chance to actually stay in center field, which they're saying maybe Radney might end up, not having that center field speed. But regardless, some very great potential from both of these guys.
Yeah, it's hard to really say much with confidence at this point. Again, these guys are so young. I mentioned Radney being 16, Rivera 17. But yeah, 6 feet, 165 pounds for Rivera. It does sound like from the reports that he has a chance to stay in center field, which is something that the Diamondbacks in their system don't necessarily have a ton of right now, at least in terms of guys who could be like everyday players who play in center field. Obviously, center field is covered for the time being, especially as far as left-handed hitters is concerned.
Correct.
But
we got plenty of those right now.
I think it's going to be a while before Belfy Rivera finds his way into the majors. But it sounds like there's some potential here, not just for him to hit a little bit, but to have some power as well. I think MLB Pipeline had him at a 55 on both the hit and power grades. If you can get a guy who can stay in center field and be a guy who can hit for average and hit for a little bit of power, there's obviously a ton of value there. So, I think Rivera is exciting. I think Radney seems to be the cream of the crop for the Diamondbacks. I noticed on Fangraphs they had him all the way up at number 3 on their list.
Yeah.
They viewed him as kind of like an Eloy Jimenez type, a guy who had big time power, corner outfield type. But it sounds like with Radney, he has kind of come into some more athleticism. They like the way that he's been moving in the outfield, and it sounds like he has a chance to maybe even stay in center field as well. Hence the Julio Rodriguez comps that we mentioned earlier.
We joked about how young these guys are to be signing a deal with a professional sports organization, 16, 17 years old. But
yeah,
I mean, honestly, in other sports, there's college. There's still college for a lot of young players involved, but this is like, I mean, there are scouts scouting kids in high school in every sport. So this isn't that uncommon. It just feels like, especially in some of the Dominican Republic and Venezuela, where Diamondbacks have like those academies, they're establishing relationships with guys at a young age because they're coming in as kids to learn how to play the game of baseball, and it allows them to both help grow the game, but also scout who they could, who from international signings from all parts of the world, who could potentially come in and help this team at a major league level. And I don't know, yesterday was such a cool day. There were so many great pictures posted of, like, I think, who was it? I think the Cubs or one of the other teams signed like 20 plus players just from the Dominican Republic alone. They were all there together in like a big like group picture. So it's just interesting, though. It is interesting. I know it's not that interesting to you, though. And the reason why I say that is because you were already being scouted for this gig at like 12 years old, right? When you were a kid caster and the Diamondbacks were looking into you and seeing if you might be able to be the next Greg Schulte.
Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly how I would frame that, but yes, I did have my one day of glory back in September of 2011, where I was on the air and impersonated Greg Schulte.
No signing, no contract, though.
Yeah, no contract.
That was more of like a tryout.
I came in there expecting a contract, but I left disappointed because that didn't happen that day. Like it was sort of a one-day contract, I guess, in a way, but egregiously, they did not pay 12-year-old me for that one day of work. So I'm still going to contact my lawyer and see what we can do about that after the fact.
A lot of shortstops that were taken yesterday across MLB from the International Signing Day. Like when you looked at the list, it seemed like the majority of the top players taken were shortstops. Diamondbacks got themselves a couple of shortstops as well. They got Alfredo Benzin and Eric De La Cruz. Benzin was number 71 on Baseball America's list. Eric De La Cruz, number 86. A little hard to get, especially the further down the list you get any kind of information on these guys.
It's really hard to find information about these guys. And it's almost like that's probably how it should be. I mean, they're 16-year-olds in the Dominican Republic. It'd be weird if we knew that much about them in some ways. But
I got his dog's name. I got everything right here, Jesse. We know everything about him. But
Baseball America, their list goes a little bit farther than some of the outlets. So, yeah, they have Alfredo Benzin at number 71. And then at 86, they have Eric De La Cruz, as you mentioned. Both of those guys also from the Dominican Republic. Their reports on both of these guys also very brief. On Benzin, they say once a smaller framed, well-coordinated shortstop who made a lot of contact from both sides of the plate. He has since grown to an athletic, wiry 6'2" with physical upside for more power to come and plus arm for the left side of an infield. So like that's an exciting profile. If you have a guy playing on the left side of the infield, especially at shortstop, if he winds up being able to stick there, and you've got plus power, that's good, right? Yeah. That's something that's pretty hard to come by in this game. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these guys kind of develop over time. And it feels like every year around this time of the year we talk about these guys, and then they kind of fall off your radar a little bit. They're still so young that you're not going to see Alfredo Benzin playing in Double-A next year.
No, you are not.
A lot of these guys will stay in the Dominican and continue to develop over there. We might not see them stateside for another year or two. But yeah, just it's kind of like buying lottery tickets, right? In some ways,
it is.
All of these guys have a chance to develop into a future star at some point in this league.
But when you're investing $2 million in a 16-year-old who's already 6'3" and 180 pounds and has plus power, plus speed, that's something in Radney that you feel like there's more there than just the luck factor. But it's baseball. Baseball is one of those games that you can have all the tools. You could be an incredible athlete, and it still might not work out for you at a major league level. We've seen that so often. Then there's guys that find a tremendous amount of success who statistically, or at least down on paper, have no business being as good as they are. So baseball is just funny like that. Bleacher Report did publish an article yesterday centered around one realistic option to plug every MLB team's biggest roster hole. And they claim that the Diamondbacks' biggest hole in their roster right now, their biggest positional need, was starting pitcher. Is that the case, Jesse? Do you think starting pitcher is the biggest positional need for the Diamondbacks at this point?
No. No, I do not. Yeah. But it's not an outrageous suggestion.
It's not. Because you're going to say DH, or you're going to say like a backup catcher. Like these other roles aren't going to be as significant in this context as saying a starting pitcher. And to be honest, it's not like the Diamondbacks need a starting pitcher, but from an outside view in, there's still a fifth spot in the rotation that right now they don't know who is going to have that role, who's going to win that spot. They do have some, obviously very good candidates for that, but bringing in a guy like they suggested, Mike Clevinger, feels like, again, a little bit more of a solid, time-tested option. Just, I don't know if it's the right one. I don't know if he would be a good fit with this team.
Yeah, I mean, not that long ago, Mike Clevinger was one of the up-and-coming pitchers in this game. I mean, you look at Clevinger's numbers during his years with Cleveland, he was really, really good there for a time. Not really that guy anymore. If we look at his numbers for 2023, 131 in the third innings this past year, a 3.77 ERA, 1.23 WHIP, strikeout rate at 20%. That's below average. Walk rate at 7.3%. That is below average, which is a good thing in that case. 2.2 wins above replacement over at Fangraphs, which is pretty solid. So yeah, he had a solid year. He's not an ace. He's not a number 2 starter at this point. Would he on paper slot in pretty nicely in that number 5 spot for the D-backs? Absolutely. But as we've talked about before on this show, the Diamondbacks have a greater need right now, which is designated hitter. They need to add some thump into this lineup. We talked about that with Dan Szymborski on the show last week. I think that should be priority number 1 for them. Not to say that it would be a bad thing if they did that and also we're able to do this, but I'm not sure that that's a realistic outcome at this point.
Well, and again, I don't hate this option, but I have to ask if, again, someone like Clevinger would be a good fit. He might be for this team. I just know... I know the bad stuff about him, which is part of being an athlete, is where the bad is carried around more than the good, and you get a reputation. Gabriel also said, wasn't there some alleged domestic violence stuff with him? There was, which again is a great reason to not want to be a part.
There was that.
I'm part of the organization.
Yeah, that was, I think, about a year ago that came out last March. And then there also, I mean, I don't even know if this is worth mentioning, but Mike Clevinger did make some comments at a certain Diamondbacks broadcaster. I think that was back in 2022.
Yeah, it's gonna be awkward in some of the meetings and some of the things.
Yeah. It was Bob Brenly was kind of joking about how slow of a worker Mike Clevinger is, and Mike Clevinger sort of got back at him after the game, made some kind of passive aggressive comments at Bob Brenly. And yeah, we put all those things together, and frankly, I don't know if Mike Clevinger is the type of person that the Diamondbacks would want to acquire.
Yeah,
they tend to stay away from guys who have any kind of domestic violence, even if it's just allegations in this case. And having beef with the color commentator, I don't want to say that's like a deal breaker or anything, but it doesn't feel like a move that the Diamondbacks would make for a number of different reasons.
I love Bob Brenly, and I want to say that Bob Brenly does get things that he says kind of blown out of proportion a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever means them with like the malice or anything that they get turned into. However, it's at times when you compare, stuff like Marcus Stroman wearing a do-rag to Tom Seaver and stuff, you're gonna...
How many players have beef with Bob Brenly?
There's quite...
like the whole league?
What's funnier about it is the thought that like they go back and would listen to what a color commentator would say, right? Torey Lovullo has said that he does not watch this show. And I can understand. I'm not a fan of one of the hosts. But I will say that Torey's reason for not watching it is because this kind of stuff would drive him crazy in second guessing himself when it came to the decisions he has to make as a manager during the season. I feel like as a player, you would equally ignore things that were said throughout the season, especially on a broadcast and things like that. But it seems like it doesn't, it does become a thing. And Elise might be right. Elise says he does stick his foot in the mouth a lot, and that's the case too. But speaking as someone that sticks my foot in my mouth quite a bit, we don't know we're doing it. We're just, we're just trying to do this job, and sometimes that's what happens to us. But Brenly, I've always loved Bob Brenly, and of course, I do know how that stuff can be kind of taken a bit differently, but also, like you said, I don't think that that's a primary reason not to bring him in as much as it's, other things with his character. Obviously, that situation we discussed there a little while ago, as well. I think that there's a very careful balance with this Arizona Diamondbacks team, right? You talked about these young players, and they're not going to impact the team for a while. But when you're talking about trading for someone or bringing someone in as a free agent to this clubhouse, there has to be a way that they fit in. It's like, sometimes they do have a bad reputation, yet when they come here, they do nothing but fit in. Like Tommy Pham, right? Tommy Pham has had a weird reputation his entire career, yet when he came here, his teammates didn't have enough nice things to say about him. And from what we saw with our own eyes, he was not only very supportive, but he became somewhat of a motivating leader in that clubhouse. And that's like what you kind of have to find at times. Not everybody's going to fit that, but you do want somebody that at least is going to mesh well with what you already have going on, which is a lot of success from 2023.
One more thing on Clevinger. I'm remembering that he is among that controversial group of players that cleared waivers in late August and could potentially have been picked up by a number of different major league teams, the Diamondbacks included. Mike Clevinger was not claimed during that process, although we wondered if he might be. He was just sort of out there for any team that wanted to claim him for the stretch run. His contract was seemingly prohibitive to that. He was on a 1-year, $12 million deal with the White Sox, but it was an $8 million salary for 2023 and then a $4 million buyout for 2024.
So you would have had to take that as the team that claimed him.
Yeah, with a mutual option for $12 million. So yeah, you would have been on the hook for his rest of year salary, which was only like $1 million at that point. But if you weren't going to bring him back, then you also would have had to take on a $4 million buyout. And at that point, you're paying more than $5 million for like 1 month of Mike Clevinger. So he wound up not being claimed when all was said and done. But it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about, should the Diamondbacks acquire Mike Clevinger for the last month of the season and into the playoffs? But it didn't happen, and no team wound up wanting to make that addition at that point.
Which again, that financially, it probably didn't make sense for a lot of teams, but you have to wonder about how much those character issues impact a team wanting to sign him.
It's a fair point.
This man had a 3.77 ERA last year. He had a 30.9% ground ball rate in 2023, which is
very low.
Very, very low, right?
Yeah, that's lots of fly balls.
That's something that, again, that might be impacting it, but I felt like he was still a solid starting option for, in comparison to a lot of pitchers around the league. I mean, 3.77 ERA puts him right there in the mix with some of the best in baseball. So I don't know. I don't know the answer here because, again, it's kind of weird. It gets into that same type of territory, not nearly, I guess, as bad as Trevor Bauer, but again, like a guy that still has something left in the tank potentially that could help you win. But do you want all of that other baggage to come with him? Not to mention, again, I don't know him as a character, but whatever. Benjamin Hunley says, I was told this would be a podcast. This podcast would be about Jake McCarthy. It is. We have other things to talk about.
We're getting there, Benjamin.
Look, I mean, God. See, Jesse thought Jake McCarthy wouldn't be enticing enough, but look at Jesse. You were wrong. Here they are. They're here in spades to watch it.
The people want 3 segments of Jake McCarthy.
They want wall-to-wall Jake McCarthy. I get it. I want it too. But we do appreciate you guys being here in the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. Of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do so now. That way you don't miss out on any Jake McCarthy related news. Sign up for notifications. That way you don't miss whenever we go live. If you are here to talk about Jed Fish, that's fine. You can also be here for that. I mean, we're not going to talk about him.
Someone did leave a comment about
someone was asking
what happened to the Wildcat stream.
Say less, my man. It doesn't matter. It's a Diamondback stream now. You can hang out and stick with us. Of course, as Gabby says there, drop a like. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. We always appreciate that. And if you're listening on the audio podcasting side, we appreciate you guys being here as well. Make sure to subscribe there. Leave us a review. We always appreciate those 5-star reviews. And of course, stop by Circle K. That's a big thing to do. It's not only fill yourself up, but make sure you fill up your car. Right now, gas is getting cheap, but it can be even cheaper by saving 25 cents off per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups with the Inner Circle program, which you can join for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit circlek.com for details. But again, 25 cents off per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups, 3 cents off per fill-up after that, or per gallon per fill-up after that. You also get all sorts of free stuff in their app, so make sure to join them today. And of course, if you like saving money and if you want more of it, a great place to do that is at Desert Financial Credit Union. For more than 84 years, Desert Financial has been Arizona's largest, most trusted local credit union. And of course, they have been dedicated to creating exceptional experiences, not only for their customers, but for the communities that they're in. Look to Desert Financial for checking and savings account, mortgages, loans, credit cards, investment options, and more. I will probably slip up on more than one occasion and still call them Desert Schools, because that's how long I've been banking with them. That they got me started on my home ownership journey. They can get you started on yours as well. I'm old, and Jesse's getting old too, by the way. We had that discussion before today's
because
show.
Adriel Radney was born in 2007, Derek, and that is not okay.
It's not okay with him. And now he knows how I feel about kids born in 1998. But anyway,
Jesse's an old soul.
He is an old. Well, we know that. But now he's actually feeling physically
he was
old.
Like 13.
Now the numbers are starting to line up, and that bothers him more than anything. But make sure you check out Desert Financial. When you open a free checking account online, you can get $200 in bonuses. Get started by visiting desertfinancial.com/200. Well, the people want Jake McCarthy, and the people. What do you want? No. What are you doing here?
I got you.
What's here?
Hey, so for those of you who don't know, Mr. Derek Montilla, you don't say it enough, but I hear you are our winner from our.
I am your fantasy football championship.
Listen, sir, I want to make sure that we commemorate that with a nice football champ pennant.
Oh, look at that! Look at that!
There you go, sir.
Hey, and I get a football.
Wow, man.
Let's go! I'm the champ, baby.
That's like the office football.
That's
the thing we throw at people when we're mad at them.
Why? People have taken bites out of this during nervous situations in games. This is great though. This is going up somewhere.
Why are we doing this
in my house? Because he feels like I didn't get honored enough because I'm still waiting for my trophy to arrive.
Brother, you have a trophy in my office.
I made my own trophy. That's the sad part.
I look at it every day.
I know. And I put my team logo, which is Johnny drinking a beer, mashed up with Stone Cold Steve Austin on an episode of SmackDown. So that's a lot of fun to look at every day. But we have some more fun things to look at. It's what you guys came here for. It's what Benjamin is here for. It's to talk about Jake McCarthy. Obviously, Jake McCarthy missed one of the best parts of the season. It's really unfortunate. Jake McCarthy had to sustain an injury. It was an oblique injury at the end of the season that caused him to miss the whole playoff run. And so yesterday, Jacob Faj, he said that he felt like Jake McCarthy was going to have his breakout season in 2024. So we got to thinking, what impact will Jake McCarthy have on the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2024? Or will he end up being potentially a trade piece that this Diamondbacks team sees that they can get some value out of? It's going to be interesting to see, but I do think that McCarthy was a big part of the team's success last year. We talked about, obviously creating chaos along with Corbin Carroll and everything he was able to do on the base path. But let's take a look at his stats for 2023 because he had himself a pretty good season. I mean, actually, 644.
He had himself a pretty bad season.
He had himself a pretty bad season.
That leading,
I was looking at 2022's numbers in front of me right now. That's completely my bad. But 2023 was definitely a down year for him. He experienced multiple injuries throughout the year. I don't think that the oblique was the only one. It felt like things kind of kept him. It felt like he kind of kept losing playing time, and it felt like he was also not available to the team.
In the minors for 2 months is really, that's really where he missed time. And that's not just a 2023 thing. For as good as Jake McCarthy was in 2022, he still got sent down twice and then recalled in 2022 as well. You can break his 2022 season into 3 different stints, and you can break his 2023 season into 3 different stints as well.
That's true.
So it's been a rough couple years for Jake McCarthy. He really seemed motivated coming into the 2023 season to not only make the team, which he was in really good position to do after the way he ended the year prior, but to stay on the roster the whole way through. That was one of his stated goals at the beginning of the year, and that didn't happen. He was back in Reno. I think before the end of April. So yeah, it's been a rough. He's had to deal with the up and down more than anyone else in this organization over the last couple years, and unfortunately for him, his 2023 season, as you see here, was not fantastic. 0.1 wins above replacement. He's basically a replacement level player. He did steal 26 bases. He remains incredibly fast, but offensively, he just didn't impact the baseball in 2023. And that's something that we talked about with Torey Lovullo at the winter meetings about a month ago now. Lovullo was asked about Jake McCarthy and kind of what he wants to see from Jake going into 2024. And Torey was like, we want to see Jake rake, right? We want to see Jake get back to really impacting the baseball. The bat to ball skill with Jake McCarthy is good. He does have the ability to put the ball in play at a pretty exceptional level, but the Diamondbacks don't want him to just do that. They want him to hit home runs, to hit the ball in the gap a little bit more, to not just be this kind of slap singles hitter moving forward. So that's what the Diamondbacks want to see more of in 2024, and we'll see if Jake is able to deliver that.
When you talk about those stints that Jake had, especially at the end of 2022, he was just remarkably good at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point where he raised his batting average from 254 all the way up to 305. And again, it was just a stretch. But like you said, when he came back up from the minors at that point, he looked like a completely different player. And it's kind of felt at times like that's what we're going to get out of him. But he also, like I said, he had like weird little nagging injuries. He also had the two months in the minor leagues. And I just don't know how, or if the Diamondbacks are going to see him as a part of their core for the long-term future, or if he has another one of those stretches, if they see the value raise enough that they might try to trade him at that point, or, flip Jake McCarthy in some way. I still feel like his potential is high, but he might not reach that potential, to be honest. I mean, it's just when you look at what he does at a minor league level, once again, it's kind of like the tale of some of these other guys that couldn't really find success at a major league level. It's just such a wide gap between his production, at times in the minors versus when he comes back up.
Yeah, hitting in Reno has never been. He's not been an issue the last couple of years. Jake has put up really impressive numbers.
He's been awesome. Last year he was incredible in Reno, and then again, it kind of, because of the success he had at the tail end of 2022, you kind of think like, all right, he's back on track. We're going to see him come back up and have another one of those stretches. Last year he didn't really have that.
Jake has been. I wrote a story actually in the off season between his incredible 2022 season and his 2023 season. Basically looking at, was this breakout for real? And Jake's, if you look at the scouting reports, Jake McCarthy has not really been projected to be the kind of player he was in 2022. I mean, the D-backs had him hitting third for like 25 games down the stretch in 2022. He was like the best hitter on the team. He hit 302, 361, 434 from July 11th through the end of the season. Yeah. He was hitting really well, but I don't know if everyone was really buying in at that point, because the scouting reports had never really projected him to be that kind of player. And I looked at some of the underlying data as far as the batted ball metrics, and it didn't really back up what Jake was doing at the plate. If you looked at his Baseball Savant page from that 2022 season to the 2023 season he just had, they don't look that different. Yeah. Jake McCarthy wasn't really hitting the ball that hard in 2022, and he wasn't hitting the ball hard in 2023 either. So yeah, my conclusion entering 2023 was that he still had a lot to prove, and he didn't really prove that this past season, right? I think there are some numbers that would indicate that he kind of overperformed a little bit in 2022, and in 2023 we kind of saw him maybe underperformed a little bit, But I think his numbers in 2023 were more indicative of the kind of hitter that he's been since coming up to the majors, which is not a terrible player. I mean, he's giving you so much value on the bases. He's one of the best base runners in all of baseball, and he can hold his own in center field. He's solid in the corners. There's a lot of value here. It's kind of always been more of a fourth outfielder profile, and that's kind of the player that we've seen over the last year. And you kind of look at his numbers over the course of his career now, they're kind of like fourth outfielder numbers, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think he's a good fourth outfielder. But getting back to where he was in 2022, he's going to have to find a way to impact the ball in a way that we've never really seen at the major league level.
He in 3 seasons in the majors has hit .261 batting average with a .711 OPS. But as in AAA, and this is based on Elise's comment that he might be another 4A player, I mean, it's incredible. He's slashing .369, .457, .596 with a 1.053 OPS, and that was in 2022. In his 45 games in 2023, .360, .416, .594 with a 10.01 OPS. I mean, it feels like, that it feels like he's on the verge of breaking through and having some of that success at a AAA level translate over to the minors. And if his projections hold up, I don't hate what Baseball Reference or Fangraphs have for his projections for 2024. Let's take a look at what he's projected to hit next season.
Yeah, these are Zips, and they're pretty good. I mean, Zips has Jake kind of bouncing back at .264 average, a .730 OPS, 9 homers, 56 RBI. I think this is based on like 500 plate appearances. So this is Jake getting a really a lot of playing time. 29 stolen bases.
I mean, he probably couldn't even get that much playing time realistically.
No,
right?
I don't know how Jake would, barring a major injury, I don't know how Jake would find his way to 500 plate appearances as things stand now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if he hits 300 and, I guess there's a world where that happens.
Yeah,
but
yeah. You bring these AAA numbers to the majors and we'll talk for sure.
29 stolen bases, I will say. Me and Damon were talking about this before the show started. 29 stolen bases, I think, is very light. Like Jake stole 26 last year when he really wasn't getting on base and he only played 99 games. If he hits 264 with like a 330 on base percentage over the course of a full season, he's going to steal way more than 29 bases.
Oh yeah.
I wrote last offseason that I thought Jake could steal 60 under the new rules. If he had found a way to maintain like the 360 on base percentage that he was doing at the end of the 2022 season. Of course, that didn't happen.
Right.
But if he finds a way to get on base that frequently and play for an entire season, I mean, he's like 98th percentile in sprint speed and very rarely has been caught trying to steal bases. So, 50 stolen bases is out there for him if he's able to find a way to get everyday playing time and really have things come together offensively.
Benjamin Hunley has a great point in the chat. He said the problem in 2023 was that Jake cut his hair. Everyone knows that. That's true.
It's a fair point.
It's a fair point. I mean, can't just go cutting those locks and expect to have the same success. But like you said, the batted ball metrics, the data all seem to be the same, right? It's just that there was something special going his way at the end of that 2022 season. Baseball's just so weird like that. It's so weird to see the success a guy had and then not really have much change for him besides the results, right? Like he's hitting the ball in the same, his averages are the same. He's about the same on his, Baseball Savant page, yet, the results weren't there for him the same way they were for that, special, 2-month run there from July to September at the end of the season in 2022. It's just, I still feel like Jake McCarthy could have been a big factor in the playoffs because
100%.
Things just were completely different. Obviously, we know how things went. Not sure if Jake McCarthy might not have been the guy that gets them to win the World Series, but you just never know how his contributions could have added to this offense, especially at times when they really struggled to get something going on the base path or create that chaos that they had become known for throughout the season.
Yeah, I think Jake really could have been an asset, at least in certain key moments in the playoffs. I want to say it was Jace Peterson who took his roster spot. It was a very last minute change, something that happened right before the start of the wild card series. Jake suffers this oblique strain in batting practice, and unfortunately that ended his season. He wasn't able to be part of the Diamondbacks postseason run at all. And we know Jace Peterson didn't really give the Diamondbacks much in the postseason. There's obviously the very heartwarming story of Tommy Pham, wanting to get Jace Peterson an at-bat in the World Series. And that was a cool moment. But Jake McCarthy, I think you might not have wanted his bat in the lineup a ton throughout the playoffs, but you certainly could have used him on the bases in a way that I'm not sure the Diamondbacks would have trusted anyone else on their postseason roster.
Elise asks, would he have gotten a hit with one of the 100,000 runners left in scoring position in Game 5 of the World Series?
Maybe,
Probably.
yeah.
Probably.
Who knows?
I think the one thing that I'm really rooting for beyond, him coming back from this injury and being able to contribute to this team is the fact that Greg Daniels, the creator of The Office, is bringing The Office back. And as you know, Jesse, Jake McCarthy is from Scranton, PA.
This is true.
So if we can somehow find a way for Greg Daniels to incorporate Jake McCarthy into the reboot of The Office,
sky's the limit.
It really doesn't matter
right?
what he does on the field. If I'm being honest, it has to be considered a success. That's what I say. But you guys know that what I say doesn't really matter. Torey Lovullo was asked about Jake McCarthy at the winter meetings.
I touched on this briefly earlier, but it was kind of Torey gave a much longer answer than what I mentioned earlier. I think it really comes down to when Jake is in hitter friendly counts, is he able to capitalize? Like when you're in a 3-1 count as a hitter and you're Jake McCarthy and you've got some power in there, I mean, he certainly has the frame for it. If you look at Jake McCarthy in person, you don't see a guy who's like, oh, he probably hits 270, but they're all singles, right?
Yeah.
Like Jake McCarthy is a pretty well-built guy who has some power in there that he just hasn't really tapped into professionally on a consistent basis. So is he able in those 3-1 counts and those hitter leverage counts, is he able to actually come through and show some of that power? That's really the key for him to going from this fourth outfielder, which, as I said before, I think he's a valuable fourth outfielder. I don't think there's much reason to put him in AAA. He deserves a spot on the Major League roster, but in order to get to that next level that a lot of people want to see him reach, you've got to do damage in those counts. You can't just be a line drive single to the opposite field every time. You've got to find a way to hit the gaps, to hit home runs in those situations. And if you combine that with everything else he gives you, that becomes a really valuable player at that point.
If you're in the front office for this team and Jake comes out of the gate hot, knowing what he has kind of shown throughout his career, where he does have these like almost segmented years where like he's hot and then it's almost worse than being streaky because he goes from being so good to so bad that they send him down. And you're talking about a guy who has been extremely good. In times you could even say he was the best hitter for brief stints on this team. So if he comes out of the gate hot, do you consider trading him? Was that something that you would try to maybe just capitalize on the value he has now, forecasting that maybe he doesn't go on to still be this player throughout the whole season?
Yeah.
Or do you consider him to, just be a part of this team now and be maybe thought of as part of that core with Corbin Carroll, maybe Gabriel Moreno and Alec Thomas? Like, what are your thoughts?
There is room on this team for Jake McCarthy or Dominic Fletcher, or I guess I'd throw Jorge Barosa in that mix as well. I don't think there's room for all of them. The Diamondbacks still have more outfielders than they know what to do with. And I'm not sure any of those guys are really going to benefit from spending much more time in AAA, including Barosa.
Yeah.
Barosa, of the three, I think you could reasonably send him down, and I think there's still some things to work on. But Dominic Fletcher, even though some of the underlying numbers weren't good, he's done pretty well for himself in AAA, and certainly defensively is very good, possibly the best out of those three. So I think the Diamondbacks have depth there. They have the ability to make a move out of that depth, and that's something we've touched on earlier. That the Diamondbacks, there's some potential to make a trade here with Pavin Smith, with Emmanuel Rivera, with Jace Peterson, with Jake McCarthy. there's a lot of guys kind of on the fringe of this roster that they just don't have room for that other teams might be interested in. I don't know if now is the right time to trade Jake McCarthy because his value is not exactly at its highest.
That's why I was saying if he comes out and has a hot April and there's
I don't know if you can make a trade like in May or something. It probably has to wait until like close to the trade deadline for something to come together. But absolutely, if he has a strong first half, then maybe that's the time where you capitalize and try to make a move in some regard there. They still have too many options in that area than they're able to use.
Another name that we brought up yesterday that's similar to that is kind of like Blaze Alexander, right? Where it's getting to a point where it feels like he needs to be on the major league roster.
He's a little stuck.
Or they need to do something with him, right? And the Diamondbacks benefited from this exact thing when it came to Gabriel Moreno and how many catchers the Toronto Blue Jays had. And even though they still have some great catchers in Toronto, it doesn't make it hurt any less that Moreno is here having the success he's having. And it could be a similar situation for us where it maybe makes the team better. And it might be a player like Barossa that probably wasn't going to see playing time. But if you trade him and you watch him go out and have success elsewhere, it stings. It's hard. It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts us as fans. Hurts the front office even more.
Yeah, and I think that's a very valid point. If you do trade a McCarthy or a Dominic Fletcher or a Blaze Alexander, there is some risk that these guys kind of figured out in other organizations, and that's the downside of having depth, right? Of like being in a good place organizationally where you have more good players than you actually have room to play. Is you might have to unload some of those guys elsewhere. For the D-backs, of course, it would just be a matter of trying to capitalize on the return and trying to add elsewhere where you do have a need.
The Diamondbacks are going to be competitive and go for the playoffs, go for that World Series again. They're going to need that depth. I mean, you said it. No team makes it through a baseball season with 5 starting pitchers. It just doesn't happen, right?
So
it's like,
try 12.
Try 12. Yeah, exactly. This team definitely could use it, and sometimes that depth, it's good if you do experience those injuries. But if that never comes, it's almost like a double-edged sword, right? Like, you didn't have your players get injured, but you also have some great ones sitting around with very little opportunity for them to get playing time or to get better, which is essentially what these young guys need to do. By getting that major league experience. But I'll tell you can get down, of course, on the MLB season for next year already over at the BetMGM Sportsbook app by placing some future bets. Of course, you can also get yourself some free bonus bets thanks to Super Bowl 58 and our friends at BetMGM Sportsbook. All you have to do is download the Sportsbook app on iOS or Android or visit BetMGM.com. Sign up and deposit at least $5 into your newly created account and place a wager in that amount of at least $5 at a standard odds price. Once you have placed that bet, you will receive $150 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your wager. Sign up for BetMGM and use that bonus code of PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through the Sportsbook mobile application for at least $5. You will receive that $158 in conjunction with Super Bowl 58 instantly in additional winnings regardless of your wager's outcome. Check out the show notes for full details. And now listen to our baby boy Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., New York, or Ontario.
Ontario.
I'm sorry.
What the hell happened there?
I'm out of practice.
You have Jacob yesterday messing it up like we were on StreamYard. We did our best, but
I think honestly, Derek, I'm going to be honest. I think you messed up yesterday's. I thought Jacob did it great.
What? Me?
Yeah. Go back
I don't
and
mess
watch the
anything
tape.
up ever.
Watch the tape.
I'll watch the tape, but I'm not going to.
I'm pretty sure Jacob was the one that was in the right on that one.
How?
I think that the chemistry was off, but he started the Ontario right when it came back on screen. It was a good Ontario from
so
Jacob.
He started it before you? Is that what happened?
He did.
You can't do
Derek
that.
was late.
I'm the lead.
I believe.
I'm the lead though. He has to follow my
That's true.
lead. That's the way this
I
works.
forgot you were the.
Okay, thanks.
This is Derek's show.
Thanks. Yeah, it's Derek's show.
It's featuring Jacob Franklin.
Try to make that very clear. Jesse's my guest every single week. You guys know that, right? Like that's the way this show works. And I didn't. That's not my fault. That's not my fault. I didn't make that division in this show. We were once a connected show. We were once a fucking dangerous show, but we're not anymore. You know why? Because the man behind the Mac over there, the people's producer, left me out of the boys' trip to Gila River Resorts and Casino. And I will never forget that as long as I live. I don't think that can be ever repaired because a boys' trip to Gila River Resorts and Casinos is one of the best things that could possibly happen in one's life. And I was not invited to that, but it's fine. That's fine because I can go have my own immersive experience with Gila Rivers without these guys. And of course, nobody does it better than Gila River Resorts and Casinos. They have an unprecedented level of entertainment and excitement. They have an incredible state-of-the-art gaming floor that has over 800 slot machines, 15 blackjack tables, live gaming tables, and more, not to mention Arizona's largest casino sportsbook. So head over to Gila River Resorts and Casinos and let them show you what the next level is all about. It's great for a night out or a staycation when you need to get away from your co-host and your producer who don't invite you to the boys' trips. But you do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit play@gila.com for more details.
Damon, are you driving this weekend or am I?
We'll figure that out. We'll figure the
All
logistics out. I was just going to say that it was actually like a behind the scenes, like it was the guest, Jesse Friedman, the guy behind the Mac, Damon. Like the main character can go on his own trips by himself.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
You're the main guy.
It's gonna be your show, and you take your own trips.
Yeah,
take your own vacation.
They're gaslighting me, and I'm not going to stand for it because the division, the not inviting me on the boys' trip, that happened first. So anything after that is a consequence of their actions and not mine. But we do appreciate you guys being here right now. We appreciate you being diehards. If you are a diehard, if you're not, join us over at gophnx.com. Grab yourself a diehard membership. You will get a free t-shirt from the phnxlocker.com, whatever wonderful shirt you're choosing. This man has Phoenix on underneath his jacket in there. You can pick whatever shirt you want. Make sure to check out Jesse's newsletter, our Discord lounge, where we will have diehard only content coming all the time, including our new game show that you guys are going to be on called Squeeze Play. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled for that, as well as Jesse's diehard only content. We're going to be doing AMAs. There's going to be a city council meeting with the mayor. All sorts of great reasons right there alone to sign up. But you also
you're hosting a game show, Derek.
I'm going to host a game show. Yeah, I'm going to host a game show, and our first contestant is going to be Chris, I think. Yeah, Chris is going to be our first contestant. But
so it's one contestant at a time.
No, I'm thinking, it's actually going to be 3 people pitted against each other to give the best answers, similar to After Midnight. So we'll see.
Okay.
Maybe we'll let the rest of the diehard members be the judges on who got the best
These
answer.
diehard subscriptions are going to sell themselves.
They really do. They really do. It's an entire network of
Everyone
entertainment.
wants game show host Derek, right?
I'll wear a tie. I mean, I'm not going to wear a shirt and suit to go along with it, but I will wear a tie. We'll figure that out. But I'm always happy to not only help somebody feel like a winner, but to help 2 other people feel like losers, Jesse. And that's why I think I would be a great game show host. I do enjoy making people feel like losers. So now I'm going to address the people of the city of Philadelphia. Hi, guys. You guys haven't had a rough go. And the Arizona Diamondbacks were a big part of that. But I get it. I know we are Arizona sports fans. So we have been going through pain and misery our entire lives practically. But I did want to cover that the Diamondbacks did help contribute to the most heartbreaking year in Philadelphia sports. And it gives me life, Jesse. It really does give me life. The 76ers, just to remind you, blew a 3-2 series lead to the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference semifinals.
That would have been like in like May or June,
correct.
Something like that.
Then fast forward to this past October time, actually October, when the Phillies blew a 3-2 series lead to the Arizona Diamondbacks in the National League Championship Series.
Philly sports fans are passionate, man. When I was there covering that series, it's insane. It's another level.
You chose a very good word in passionate.
I respect the passion that Phillies fans bring to the ballpark on a daily basis, especially in the postseason. But There was a kind of an uncomfortable feeling in that ballpark in Game 6 and 7 when the series came back to Philly. There was just like this like nervous tension in the air.
Panic.
I guess is how I would describe it. Where, Phillies fans in Games 1 and 2. It was loud throughout, but it was louder in Games 1 and 2 because the Phillies came out and they were hitting homers and they were doing crazy
just
things
right away.
They were dominating the Diamondbacks. The place was going berserk. But even in that Game 7, winner take all, going to the World Series, there was Phillies fans were uncomfortable going into that game.
They've been there. They've seen it before. They've had it happen to their teams. We would be in the exact same position. We've seen it happen to us. We know it can happen. We've seen it with the Suns. We've seen it with our teams that we thought were going to be dominant and we're going to go on to win the series. And then somebody just completely smacks you in the face all of a sudden out of nowhere, even when you have a series lead, right? But I can kind of understand that. I felt like that pressure was the pressure the Diamondbacks put on everybody in the postseason because everybody else was expected to win. And the Diamondbacks were just the team that eked their way in. So the Diamondbacks didn't have that pressure to win because if they lost, they would be losing to the Brewers, which won their division. They would be losing to the Dodgers, which obviously
are
they
the
would
Dodgers.
be they would be losing to these teams that everybody would like say logically that makes sense that they lost to them. Right. But so that made it easy for the Diamondbacks not to really have the pressure on them. Sure, maybe in some moments, like you said, after Games 1 and 2 in Philadelphia, you do feel that pressure a bit. You do feel a little differently about coming out and having all those home runs hit against you. But it still felt like the Diamondbacks never really had much to worry about. No matter what, they were going to kind of be applauded and cheered for how far they'd made it, especially making out of the wild card round, right? So it was a win from that point going forward. Meanwhile, the Eagles, they were 10-1. And Jesse, I was watching this game where the Eagles had a very bad first half after being 10-1. And they went into the locker room at halftime and their fans booed them. And I mean booed them hard. They booed them like the betrayal was real. And being a Cardinals fan, I found that to be hilarious. Your team is 10-1. The game isn't even over yet. They're just going into the locker room to, try to figure things out and get themselves back together. And instead, they're getting booed by their home fans after they walk off the field. Now, I respect that because Philadelphia fans are just a different breed, really, when it comes to it, right? I do respect it. Again, that word passionate, it's very safe, and I appreciate it. I like it. But I will say that there's something to be said about, like, demanding that much of your team that at 10-1, you're booing them. Yet, I want to say, it was the Niners game, piece of Yoshi. I think that was what it was. You're right. Yeah, it was the Niners game. But what I do want to say is, were they overreacting? Or did they just know? They knew watching that team against the Niners that their 10-1 team was a fraud. And they wanted them to know that they knew. They weren't saying boo. They were saying frauds is what they were saying, maybe. I don't know. I'm putting that out there. But I don't know. Philadelphia fans, I got to give them credit. They know their sports. They know their shit. And they are miserable right now. Understandably so. Yeah,
I think Mad Dog, a lot of shade being thrown at Mad Dog Russo throughout the Diamondbacks postseason run, and rightfully so.
He deserved it.
But he absolutely deserved it. But at the same time, he was far from the only media personality who thought the Diamondbacks had no chance in that series. Even talking with other reporters on the field and whatnot, being there covering these games, there was not a soul in the press box who was picking the Diamondbacks to win that series, as far as I'm aware.
That's totally the truth. That's the honest to God truth. I will say that lots of times. As a matter of fact, that tweet that you unearthed from April of last year where you asked what was going to be a satisfying ending to this season, and Espo tweeted World Series. He's a witch.
If Espo had been more specific and said World Series champions or win,
maybe we would have confetti in a jar that some of us could keep.
Something
it would have been awesome.
if you're gonna ask for the sun, moon, and stars, you have to be specific about exactly what it is that you're asking for. So now Espo, he learned though. Espo learned, and he'll be better. He'll be better next year.
Yeah, he'll come spring training prepared and ready to give us the right answer this time. But of course, we thank you guys for being here. We know you guys always know the right answer. Of course, you can make sure to follow us on Twitter. I am at @cap_caveman with a K. This absolute maniac next to me is at Jesse and Friedman. The people's producer is Damon. We'll mend this relationship somehow, but you can follow him on Twitter at Damon Dog. That's DAWG. We are still Damon's dogs.
Bark.
Of course, our show's at PHNX_DBacks, but all roads do lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We thank you guys for stopping by. We appreciate your time, and we will see you tomorrow. In the meantime, have fun. Remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when you're 16 years old and you're 6'3", 185 pounds.
We all silly like the mayor.